Now, on January 20th, Freedom Dragon docked to the ISS. And upon ingress to the ISS, the crew was greeted by the Expedition 70 crew in a welcome ceremony. And this really kind of started their entire 18-day stay on the orbiting lab, which was incredibly packed. So over the next 18 days, Alper, Walter, Marcus, MLA all conducted a slew of media outreach events, science and technology demos, but also a number of payload and research activities that we can see there on our screen, including getting to work with the Life Science Glove Box, which I think is amazing. Additionally, we had those technology demos. So Marcus got to interface with robotic crews on ground, as well as some suit demonstrations on orbit. And as we mentioned, this is an opportunity for this crew to understand what it's like to live and work in a microgravity environment. But at the end of their 18 days, they culminated in a short farewell ceremony, which sent crew home.
SpaceX, nose cone secured for entry. SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
What's really cool about all those things that you mentioned is not only is the crew returning, but there's going to be over 550 pounds of research also returning back to Earth with the crew. And Dragon makes that possible. Dragon is designed to carry up to 7 passengers on the vehicle, but today we only have 4 crew members, which means that we can use the additional space currently in this configuration, which is underneath the seats of the 4 crew members, to store cargo.
There's sort of 2 philosophies in aerospace. One is you sit around and you think about requirements and you think about what you want to build, or you build something that doesn't exist in the world. Is you've got to start building prototypes. We sit and think about what we want to build for a little bit, but then we just go build the thing, test the thing, fire the engine. Our role really is to lead the way.
A year ago, walking into this facility, you didn't see nearly as much hardware as you see today. Full-scale mock-ups, training hardware, flight hardware. Axiom was created to build a space station, and that's exactly what this team is doing.
We're still on target to launch our first module the end of 26. The pressure vessel is undergoing welding at Talassolenia, our partner in Italy. There's some of the largest forgings in the world. There's only a couple places in Europe that could even forge some of the pieces. The pressure vessel will arrive in Houston, and then we'll do all the final outfitting at our spaceport facility. And in the 50-year history of human spaceflight in Houston, SPI is to keep as much engineering in-house as possible. It allows us to have long expertise over a long time because we want to be building modules and adding to our space station for years and years.
LOS coming up at 5:16 a.m. In just under 10 minutes from now. Reusability is key to making spaceflight more routine and ultimately what will enable humans to become multiplanetary. The Dragon spacecraft flying today is flight proven. The Ax-3 Dragon has flown 3 times on missions to the space station. Its first flight was on NASA's Crew 4 mission in April of 2022. Axiom-3 is the second reflight of this Dragon. There have been 12 Dragon crew missions to date, 8 with NASA astronauts and 4 with private astronaut crews. Dragon unlocks new research opportunities that ultimately impact life on Earth. For us, these Dragon missions are important for safely flying astronauts so that they can conduct science and research and other activities in space, but also because they are laying the foundation for that future where more people from more countries all around the world have an opportunity to travel to space, whether it's low Earth orbit, the moon, Mars, or beyond. In the history of human spaceflight, less than 700 people have ever been to orbit. At SpaceX, we want to help create a future where not just hundreds of people, but thousands and ultimately millions of people can travel off of Earth to live and work in space and other planets. Last year, we flew 6 Dragon missions. This year, we could launch up to 8 missions, including 5 or 6 human spaceflight missions, and that's only going to increase in the future. To support our growing manifest of Dragon missions, we've recently made some new upgrades to our other Florida launch pad, Space Launch Complex 40. We're on our way to having 2 launch pads capable of supporting human spaceflight missions, meaning that we'll have more opportunities for more people to fly on Dragon to orbit. If you're
Dragon SpaceX, 5 minutes until predicted comm blackout. See you on the other side at 1323.
Copy, SpaceX. Talk to you soon.
Okay, and there we also heard confirmation of an expected LOS time, followed by an expected AOS time of 5:23 Pacific Time AM. Continuing on with MLA, a highlight of his trip here was being able to speak with his alma mater, the U.S. Naval Academy, where he took questions from current midshipmen. And in just over 18 days, docked to the ISS, and an anticipated total mission duration of 23 flight days, this mission now holds the record for the longest Axiom Space mission, eclipsing the previous record set by AX-1 in 2022. This crew also conducted a total of 28 interactive outreach and media events, including 9 events with students around the world. But beyond that, Alper had a conversation with the president of Turkey. Walter engaged with the Italian prime minister. Marcus spoke at the European Space Conference, and MLA spoke with Melissa Navia from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Also, the AX-3 astronauts performed 56 different experiments, including studying metastatic breast cancer organoids for the Stanford Stem Cell Institute. And we were told the crew was able to see microgravity-induced changes in organoid growth versus how they grow on ground.
That is a very long list of things that this crew did on board the International Space Station, but all really awesome. It's great to see that they also incorporated some outreach events throughout all their science experiments that they had to do while they were working there. So just incredible crew.
Oh yeah, it was an amazing mission. They accomplished all their mission objectives, from media outreach, like you mentioned, Jesse, to all of the science research that was done, and to be able to come back and say, we did it all. That's an amazing feat. And this, like we mentioned at the beginning, this is a mission of firsts for so many countries, for so many agencies. But there's one crew member that we have not gotten to talk about, and she's on board, and her name is Gigi. She is a critical crew member and aspect of the mission. So that's right. Our 5th crew member is our microgravity indicator, Gigi. This is a long-standing tradition in spaceflight and was continued on AX-3. And this tradition is having an indicator inside the spacecraft to provide a visual reference for when the crew has reached weightlessness.
Unique and custom design, and you can see there on your screen. They have a 3D printed helmet, and this is actually all a single piece. Everything is connected together. The suit with the helmet is all a single piece. And this suit is actually made to fit with the seat. So these are custom suits to the astronauts, but also the suits and the suits and the seats are customized to match each other. And they're really an extension of the Dragon spacecraft. They essentially can provide, nitrox and cooling just as the cabin capsule of the Dragon spacecraft. So very cool, very unique spacesuits that we have here. Currently waiting for the crew to splash down, and will begin their recovery operations to recover the crew. Once they splash down in the ocean, we will do some safety checks, but then the recovery crew will start to make their way to the capsule and start performing recovery operations. Right.
Yeah, and at this point, 17,500 all the way down, coming back. And there you can see the recovery vessel, a live shot of that. We're going to see a bit more of that later today.
And we are just about a minute away from the expected acquisition of signal. Again, we are currently in a blackout period. Once we reach the point of expected AOS, the core will begin to call out to the crew to establish communication once again. So we may start hearing those call outs here shortly. But again, still in the blackout period, but expected to come out of that in just about a minute.
Exactly right. And you can see there on your screen MCC-X in Hawthorne here in California, as well as MCC-A in Houston, Texas, are constantly monitoring the situation that we have for crew coming back down. They are supporting crew throughout this entire...
SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX.
Loud and clear as well. Expect automated chute deployment.
Copy, Arthur.
And we did hear that call out that we have confirmation of acquisition of signal, and you can see on your screen a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom. Now we're just about 3 minutes away from drogue parachute deployment. And there you can see a live view from the ground watching Dragon as it's making its way back down to Earth, which is a really awesome view there.
Yeah, this is a beautiful example of exactly what we were just talking about during the loss of comms phase. Upon acquisition of signal, we are looking for good comm checks with the crew, which we got, and visual confirmation of the vehicle, which we got.
Dragon SpaceX, GPS has converged. Expect nominal drogue deploy altitude.
Copy, SpaceX.
Good comms between the core and the crew. And again, we are just a couple minutes away from drogue parachutes deploying. And just under a minute after the drogue parachutes deploy, and currently you can see on your screen that they are reconfiguring their seats. So you can see that the seats are rotating down, and that is happening live right now in preparation for splashdown.
Yeah.
Brace for drogue window.
And looked like the seat rotation was completed, and now they are ready for those drogue parachutes. What you're seeing on your screen is a live view of the Dragon capsule returning back to Earth. And there you can see the drogue parachutes have deployed. And a cool view from the capsule itself. Shortly after, we should see the 4 main chutes deploy here.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues and descent rate nominal.
And excellent call-outs there.
You see the same, Arthur?
And we do have visual confirmation that the drogues have deployed. Now just waiting for the 4 main parachutes to deploy as well. And there you can see on your screen, 4 mains have deployed. They will begin to slowly open up, help slow the vehicle down. The vehicle is approximately moving at 119 miles per hour, and the main chutes deployed at 6,500 feet. And there's an awesome view from the capsule itself, looking up at the 4 main
Visual
chutes.
on 4 healthy mains and descent rate nominal.
Copy. We show ourselves at 1,000 meters.
Copy 1,000.
Got some good call-outs there. And just a few minutes away from the Axiom-3 crew splashing down back on Earth here.
SpaceX Dragon, 800 meters.
Copy 800.
And what you're hearing is call-outs of the ground and the crew on board, monitoring the altitude of the vehicle and the crew as they're making their way back down to Earth.
.600 meters.
600.
And we're just a couple minutes away from splashdown. Landing in water is simpler, therefore more reliable than landing on land. And there you can see an awesome view.
It's beautiful.
The Dragon capsule, Dragon Freedom, carrying AX-3 as it's
400.
slow making its way to splashdown.
No, these are absolutely fantastic views that we got at acquisition of signal, Jesse. It was incredible coming back from AOS to see those good comm checks, those good visual confirmations of the vehicle coming in, and then the visual confirmations of the first drogue chutes, which deployed beautifully, and followed by the main chutes. And additionally, we got to see crew even rotate their seats to prepare for splashdown. All of these are
200. Crew brace for splashdown.
Copy. Braced for splashdown.
And touchdown. And flashdown. Coming up. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and flashdown.
Splashdown.
And Dragon.
Copy. Splashdown. We are with you in 4.800.
Copy.
And an excellent sight to see. Welcome home, AX-3. As you can see on your screen, we have visual confirmation of splashdown of the Dragon spacecraft. Dragon Freedom has returned home with the AX-3 crew.
Dragon SpaceX, can you repeat your last call? It cut out for post-splashdown observations.
Nominal.
Copy. Nominal.
Some excellent views of the Dragon capsule there. The SpaceX recovery ship and team have been waiting for Dragon splashdown, and they will now begin to make their way to the splashdown
SpaceX
location.
confirm environmental assessment is not necessary.
SpaceX confirms. Not necessary.
Some good comms there. The teams have been ready and waiting. Roach, they will do some quick safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the crew to egress the Dragon vehicle. Then they will begin to prepare the Dragon capsule to be lifted back on or onto the recovery ship, which they will then open the hatch and the crew can egress from the Dragon capsule. These are some great daytime views of Dragon splashdown. AX-3 crew still inside of the Dragon capsule, waiting for their recovery vessel, Shannon, and recovery crew to come pick them up.
Yeah, this has been an absolutely picture-perfect splashdown, and these views are really highlighting that. And it's not just beautiful, it's an essential tool for ensuring that we keep eyes on this Dragon, right? But you can't deny that being able to watch, in addition to commanders' calls down to crew, all painted a wonderful example of a lockstep splashdown day, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And you can see Dragon sitting there in the Atlantic with chutes deployed, and crew is comfortable and safe and healthy, and they are waiting now for Shannon to make first contact to begin the recovery operations. Is going to be, again, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of dynamic aspects over the next 30 minutes as crew makes their way, as ground crews make their way to Dragon, and then as they begin to prep Dragon for hoisting it into the vehicle.
And you could also see in the background, the camera has now tilted on their way to help the crew.
Dragon SpaceX, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in approximately 1 minute. And on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home. Thanks for flying SpaceX.
Flying SpaceX was our pleasure, and 1 minute to the recovery operation.
Speaking of fast boats, that was pretty fast. They're just about a minute away, and you can see them now there live on the screen, the fast boats approaching very quickly.
Yeah, and like you said, it was faster than anticipated, but it's an example of when we have teams prepped and you have you've done your homework to know where crew's coming back. It's an example of how Axiom and SpaceX are ready to receive their crew back on land.
And you can see the recovery crew now getting close to approaching the Dragon Freedom spacecraft. Now, Dragon has already autonomously completed some of the safety inspections following splashdown, and now the recovery team will also perform a few safety checks just to make sure.
Dragon SpaceX request permission to come aboard via the display camera view only.
You're welcome to come aboard, Arthur, and just for your essay, all 4 crew members are feeling well.
SpaceX copies, great news.
Sounds like we might get a view inside of the Dragon capsule at our crew. And there you can see the recovery team reaching out to Dragon. They will actually climb onto the Dragon capsule, perform some safety checks to make sure that it is safe for the vehicle, for the crew members inside of the vehicle to egress. And then begin operations to prepare the capsule to be lifted back onto the, not back onto the recovery ship, but onto the recovery vessel once the recovery vessel is there.
Exactly right, Jesse. And with that call to the crew on Dragon, with a great live view there of inside the Dragon Freedom capsule, we heard MLA call that all 4 crew members are feeling good. They're feeling well, they're feeling healthy. So this is fantastic. That first fast boat made good initial contact and, like you mentioned, is ready to kind of press into the next phase of operations here as we pull that Dragon back into the recovery vessel. You can also see on your screen the second fast boat, which provides redundant support to the primary fast boat, which made initial contact. In addition to helping just keep that area secure, right? Redundancy is a key aspect of spaceflight operations, not only on ground and in orbit, but also during recovery. In addition to that recovery, they're also working on that parachute recovery. So we saw that Dragon had jettisoned its parachutes after deployment and after splashdown. And this fast boat, as well as another jet ski, are helping to recover that parachute to, again, keep that area secure to not inhibit any operations that are going to be underway while that primary fast boat's making contact and doing its work, but also while Shannon's coming up right behind them.
There's that jet ski passing by. Part of the recovery team. Mm-hmm. And again, what you're seeing here is a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, now splashed down on Earth. The recovery team is performing their recovery operations. Again, just waiting for them to perform some safety checks. We did get some good comms earlier that the crew is feeling good after Splashdown. They had a pretty dynamic adventure this morning. And now hopefully get to relax a little bit while they're, you know, waiting for the Dragon lift onto the recovery vehicle.
Right. Right, dynamic, but completely according to plan. It was a beautiful execution of a splashdown day, and you can tell their crew is visors up. They're looking healthy and happy, and I think they're probably really looking forward to that first breath of fresh air.
If you're just now joining us, the AX-3 crew has returned from space after being in space for about 21 days. They undocked from the International Space Station a couple of days ago and are now back on Earth. The recovery crew, again, performing their recovery operations. These are standard procedures. They're currently making sure that the vehicle is safe. Then we should see one of the crew members hop on board the Dragon capsule and begin operations to prepare the capsule for lifting onto the recovery vessel. There you can see on your screen that the recovery crew member there is doing some checks, some ordnance and hypergol checks at the moment. Again, making sure that the vehicle is safe to approach. Then they can climb onto the capsule, begin rigging operations, and prepare the vehicle to be lifted onto the recovery vessel. Today is Shannon. Shannon is making its way to the recovery zone here. But these fast boats, and we did see a jet ski also with the crew, make their way a little bit faster and get the recovery process started sooner until the recovery vessel makes its way to the landing zone. What you're seeing is a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, patiently waiting for their recovery operations. They've made their way back down to Earth, and the recovery team is working there to rest the crew for the first time in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, we're waiting for those ordnance and hypergol checks to complete.
Dragon SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigging in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Copy LR, sir. Standing by.
And almost on call. That was an excellent call from crew to Dragon, saying that the hypergol checks are complete and the ordnance checks are complete, and they all completed nominal. So with that, we were able to proceed to the next phase of the dynamic operations, which allows rigging to begin, so we can hoist Dragon Freedom into Shannon. And we also heard there that crew will be having their PMC or private medical conference with SpaceX. With SpaceX Medical, and just checking in on crew. But as we reported earlier, or as MLA reported earlier, this crew's feeling healthy and happy to be home. Their visors are up, they are monitoring their systems, and over the next 25 minutes, we should be able to get them on board.
And there you can see on your screen our recovery vessel, Shannon, patiently waiting for the crew and capsule to be ready for lifting onto the recovery vessel. You can also see on Shannon, there is that landing pad there. That's because a helicopter is going to, that's a much faster trip than, taking the recovery vessel all the way back to shore. So that's what that landing pad is for.
That's right. If you're just joining us, Axiom-3 crew has splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And at this point, we are waiting for that recovery, the recovery efforts to continue. SpaceX team has made first contact with the Dragon Freedom capsule and crew. Crew reported all nominal health checks. They're feeling good and excited to be home. And at this point, we are waiting for those rigging operations to continue to get Dragon onto Shannon, that recovery vessel, so that they can have their final medical checks and get on that helicopter and get back home, get back to land.
Yeah, I'm sure the crew's pretty excited to be back home. Mm-hmm. Pretty excited to take a breath of fresh air, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Right, excited to be home after, the 3 weeks in orbit, right? 23 flight days, 21 days, 18 days aboard the International Space Station, where they accomplished a suite of activities.
Dragon SpaceX comm check on Dragon to ground public.
Clear.
And Dragon, you're coming in choppy. We have pretty ready comm right now, so we're going to take some steps to reconfigure Dragon communications before we step into the PMC.
Copy, SpaceX.
Some comms between the core, the beginning rigging for preparation of lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel. And this is really great that we had a daytime splashdown. We're getting some really excellent views of all of these operations happening.
It's a beautiful early morning for Splashdown. The weather's looking fantastic. The local environment is looking fantastic for crews to perform these operations, right? We mentioned earlier that this is really a safety critical aspect of the mission. And one that's important to note that we talked about training earlier too, and this aspect of the mission is something that these crews train for heavily. This fast boat recovery team, the entire recovery team efforts, all train for their specific roles in today's operations like this. And when the weather is playing nominally with you like this, it allows for that to execute quite well. And so we're able to see these teams really execute kind of a picture-perfect recovery effort. Rigging is going smoothly. And they're progressing well into it at this point, and we're waiting for those next steps to be able to hoist Dragon into Shannon.
Yeah, you mentioned, training for these operations. Throughout this entire mission, every team does the same thing. Yeah. They're following very standard procedures, going step by step, and making sure that they perform every step carefully and having verification of each one of those steps. So while it may look like they're just doing their work, they're actually, following very specific instructions.
Exactly.
And again, what you're seeing on your screen is a recovery crew member on board of the Dragon capsule, rigging the vehicle in preparation for lifting onto or hoisting onto the recovery vessel. And honestly, the recovery team must be just as excited as the crew. They're going to be the first people
you're absolutely right.
that they get to see when they egress the Dragon capsule. So this is really special. I'm sure the recovery crew, probably really enjoys their job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, to play such a pivotal role in these operations, right? Crew has been, from launch until now, they've been away from their friends and family and away from Earth. And to be that crew that helps greet them and ensure that they're safely brought in, right? Mm-hmm. Following the procedures, doing your job to make sure that this crew is getting safely brought out of the water and into the vehicle, and then be able to see them smile and see everybody smile at the end of it. It's got to be a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how exciting that must be. Again, a live view inside of the Dragon Freedom capsule with our crew members of the AX-3 crew. And there's a view of the recovery vessel. That is where the Dragon will be lifted out of the water and will sit in that little nest that you see there, that ring on the vessel.
It's a perfect name for holding a dragon.
Exactly.
That was intentional,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Definitely.
But right, it's a great view that kind of, to me signifies what Shannon's role in this operation is, right? Right now it's sitting and waiting while making approach, while the primary contact team is ensuring that rigging is, executed properly, but then also verified and checked, as you mentioned, part of the procedures prior to performing the hoist operation to get Dragon into its comfortable nest. And at that point, we have additional crew members, like you said, that we're going to be very excited to get this Dragon on board. But it takes time, and we've got to go a little slow, because slow is smooth, and then smooth is fast, and that allows us to get crew on board.
Yeah, and once Dragon is in that nest, we saw that it was near the end of the ship. It will actually slide forward to position itself next to a platform, which will be level with the hatch. So when they open the hatch, the astronauts can egress comfortably out of the Dragon capsule there.
Excellent service. And that is a beautiful shot if you're just tuning in to see Shannon, the recovery vessel, SpaceX's recovery vessel in the Atlantic, ready to meet and greet and hoist the AX-3 crew upon their splashdown today off the coast of Florida.
And for those wondering what this landing pad is for, again, once the crew egresses the vehicle, they will, do some safety and health checks to make sure that the crew is healthy. But then they'll board a helicopter that's going to land on that landing pad that will take them back to land pretty quickly. So they've got some great service, as you mentioned.
And what's excellent about this view, too, is you can really see a lot of aspects of these operations kind of play out.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX. Copy.
Copy. We have you the same. We are transmitting through Shannon recovery vessel now, and with this, I'm going to try and set up the quick PMC with flight surgeon.
Okay, standing by.
On Dragon Freedom, waiting to establish some communication so that they can talk with SpaceX medical surgeon. But during that time, crews on ground, or in the water actually, are continuing to make operations or proceed through operations to prepare Dragon for hoist into the recovery vessel Shannon. So you can see on your left there the initial fast boat that made initial covery and proceeded through rigging operations for the Dragon spacecraft, and the recovery vessel Shannon nearing or making closer approach to Dragon to begin the hoisting operations.
There you can see, as John mentioned, the recovery vessel is now beginning to pull the Dragon capsule towards it.
Dragon SpaceX, we are back on Dragon to ground public.
Loud and clear.
I think what's amazing about this shot, Jesse, is it looks like it's all so simple. And the care and precision that has to go into this operation from all of the teams that you see, that you can't even see in this shot, that are supporting this type of operation, is amazing. To allow for that hydraulic lift now to come down and begin this hoisting operation. All of this was a very tightly choreographed dance to get us to this point, and it's really exciting to see us getting here to where we're about to hoist Dragon into the nest.
Yeah, exactly. It may look easy, but it is, a lot of training, a lot of effort, a lot of planning goes into these operations. And as you said, very exciting. The hydraulic lift is now down, and they will begin to start to lift the Dragon capsule here shortly. We'll lift the capsule onto the deck of the recovery vessel, into the nest that you see there. That's that circular ring there on the deck. And again, once the Dragon capsule is seated.
Dragon SpaceX, approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift.
We copy, SpaceX.
Once the capsule is in that nest on the deck, that nest will actually slide forward to put Dragon next to a platform that will make it much easier for the crew to egress the Dragon capsule.
Right, and once they egress, they'll be greeted by SpaceX and Axiom medical professionals to just ensure that, hey, we just want to make sure you're doing okay, everything's going all right, do those first initial checks, and then at that point, crew is able to step out and take their first steps, too, for the first steps in a number of weeks.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Again, very cool that the crew on board this recovery vessel gets to be the first to greet the crew after they've been in space for a few weeks.
Dragon SpaceX, brace for capsule lift.
Bracing.
And a nice big jump into the ocean for the recovery crew, completing their rigging operations. And Dragon Freedom being lifted onto recovery vessel Shannon. I love that they mentioned to brace for the lift.
Yeah.
You could see that the vehicle is moving and swaying a little bit, but I'm sure it was nothing compared to reentry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Crew's had a lot of dynamic operations associated with today, and this is one of the final ones. There's a few more that have to go into play before they're back on land. But this moment of getting them finally back out of the water and into this nest situated while they're comfortable is a wonderful moment for the AX-3 crew.
And a great choreographed lift there. Gently setting down the Dragon capsule onto the nest.
It's important for this point, too, right after that lift, to kind of orient it just right so that it's ready for that translation maneuver you talked about, while also ensuring that, crew is staying in a comfortable, well-oriented position so that egress operations are as smooth as they can be.
Yeah, this gives you a good view of that hatch that the crew is going to egress from. You can see that it's pretty much in the middle of the capsule. So moving it towards the platform, that platform will be just at the bottom of that hatch. And that hatch has been closed since they left Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
Good calls there between Core and Commander Lopez Alegria to confirm that crew is that we are preparing to press into the egress phase of today's operations. But yeah, Jesse, you mentioned that side hatch that they'll be coming out of hasn't been opened in a number of weeks, and that's because when they're on orbit, right, they're using the hatch that's under that nose cone, the docking hatch, to translate between their vehicle and ISS. So once they close that door on launch day, it doesn't open until today.
And I'm sure the crew is very excited for that side hatch to open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We did hear some comms talking about this, but the crew, the recovery crew there, is doing some last safety checks now that the vehicle is on the deck of the recovery vessel prior to the translation motion of live view inside of the capsule that is on the recovery vessel, with the crew still inside, patiently waiting.
That's right. If you're just joining us, we're in the final phases of the recovery of the splashdown of the AX-3 crew, which splashed down back to Earth earlier today at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. We're in those final phases of recovery efforts, which is the next step up being hatch open. So this will be the first time that crew has exited that side hatch in over 3 weeks, or about 3 weeks, or 23 flight days. And
If you're just now joining us, we are watching the live egress of the Axiom-3 crew. And you can see that Marcus Want, our mission specialist coming out of seat 4, is getting ready to egress the Dragon Freedom capsule.
This will be Marcus's first steps in gravity in 23 flight days, 21 days in space, and 18 days aboard the International Space Station. So we're taking our time and making sure that he is comfortable and making sure that he's going to be safely egressing the vehicle. Welcome home, Marcus. And again, visor up, and I think, of course, we're going to see Marcus smiling. Yeah, we are. Okay.
There we go. Some waves.
He's giving his wave. Marcus is feeling good. This is excellent to see. Crew's going to assist as we take those first steps back in gravity. And our third egress of the day, we have Alper Izirace, the first Turkish astronaut to fly to space. Alper is looking good. He's excited. He's excited. He's ecstatic. He's happy to be home. He's giving excellent smiles and a great fist bump there. I love to see that.
And last but definitely not least, our frequent flyer, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria.
And even with that frequent flyer card, MLA is no stranger to this maneuver, but he is also taking his time, and he is looking good. And welcome back, MLA. Excellent. It is wonderful to see all 4 crew members of AX3 egress comfortably and safely out of the Dragon Freedom that they've spent their time in for the last 2 days, certainly, but also just a number of days on this mission. But they're looking good, they're looking healthy, and it was wonderful to see. So.
Well, now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checks by SpaceX and Axiom Space medical teams, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. AX3 lifted off from launch pad 39A on Thursday, January 18th, and arrived at station 36 hours later. They spent on another successful mission to the International Space Station. Be sure to tune in for our next human spaceflight mission, NASA's Crew 8, which is just a few weeks away. Check out spacex.com/launches for updates and for the schedule of upcoming missions. We'll see you again soon.